The sky above Teguk Prime burned red as the alien ships blocked out the sun. Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of the last evacuation transport, watching his world die below. The crystalline beings called themselves the Velthrak Empire, and they had come with a simple demand: give us your resources, your technology, and your people to work in our deep space mines. When the human colonists said no, the aliens showed them what happened to those who refused the mighty Velthrak. "Captain, we have 50,000 people on board," said Lieutenant Minho from his station. His voice was steady, but Jiwan could see the pain in his young officer's eyes. "That's everyone we could save. 50,000. Out of 12 million souls who had called Teguk Prime home just 3 days ago." Jiwan felt sick to his stomach, but he kept his face calm. His people needed him to be strong right now. The transport shook as another plasma blast struck somewhere near the landing bay. Through the viewports, Jiwan could see the cities burning. The crystal towers the Velthrak had built for their own use gleamed like jewels among the flames, untouched by their weapons. They wanted the planet intact, just without the troublesome humans who lived on it. "Get us out of here," Jiwan ordered. "Maximum speed to the jump point." As the ship lifted away from the dying world, Jiwan walked through the refugee sections. Families huddled together in the cargo bays, children crying for homes they would never see again. In one corner, he found a young woman named Yeona sitting alone. She was maybe 25, with the calloused hands of an engineer. Her eyes were red from crying. "My parents," she said when she saw him looking. "They were in Section 7 when the bombing started. I couldn't reach them in time." Jiwan knelt beside her. He had no words that could fix this kind of pain. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "We'll remember them. We'll remember all of them." Near the medical bay, an elderly man named Dowan sat hunched over a data pad. His white hair was singed from the fires, but his fingers moved quickly across the screen, saving file after file. Jiwan recognized him as one of the colony's historians. "What are you doing?" Jiwan asked. Dowan looked up with fierce determination in his old eyes. "Recording everything. Every name, every family, every detail of what they did to us. Humans have long memories, Captain. Longer than these crystal monsters. Think." The ship reached the edge of the system as the Velthrak fleet began their final bombardment. Admiral Krexval, the crystalline being who commanded the attack, sent one last message to the fleeing humans. His voice rang across the communication, channels like breaking glass. "Let this be a lesson to all inferior species," the alien said. "The Velthrak Empire tolerates no defiance. Your world burns as payment for your arrogance. Tell your people what happens when they refuse to serve their betters." On the bridge, Minho clenched his fists. "Sir, should we respond?" Jiwan watched the last light of his homeworld fade behind them. "No. Let him think he's won. Let them all think we're broken." The jump drive charged and space twisted around them. In seconds, they were light years away from the burning remains of Teguk Prime. But Jiwan knew they carried something with them that the Velthrak could not destroy. The memory of what had been done, and the human need to make things right in the refugee sections. Word spread quickly about what Admiral Krexval had said. Inferior species. Arrogance. Payment. The survivors whispered the words to each other, and with each telling, their sadness turned to something harder and colder. Yona found herself thinking about her parents' workshop, where they had built fusion reactors for the colony's power grid. They had been brilliant engineers, creators who made life better for everyone around them. The Velthrak called that arrogance. They called human independence a crime worth genocide. Dowan saved the last file to his data pad and looked around at the faces of the survivors. He had studied human history for 70 years, and he knew something the crystal aliens did not. Humans were not like other species. When humans were wronged, they did not forget. They planned. They prepared. And when they struck back, they made sure it mattered. "Captain," Dowan called softly as Jiwan passed by again. The old historian's eyes held a strange light. "They don't know us at all, do they?" "What do you mean?" Jiwan asked. "The Velthrak. They think this is the end of the story. They think they've taught us our place. Dowan clutched his datapad closer. But humans never forget a debt. And we always pay with interest. Jiwan nodded. Slowly. Around them, children were falling asleep in their parents' arms. Families were sharing what little food they had. People were taking care of each other, even in their darkest hour. This was what the Veltrak called inferior. This was what they thought they could destroy with plasma fire and fear. How long do you think it will take? Jiwan asked quietly. Dowan considered the question. Years, maybe decades, but humans are patient when we need to be. And when we're ready, the old man's voice trailed off, but his meaning was clear. The transport ship jumped again, carrying its precious cargo of survivors toward the inner worlds of human space. Behind them, Teguk Prime cooled in the darkness, its cities silent, its people scattered to the stars. But the Velthrak had made a crucial mistake. They thought they had ended the human presence in their territory. They thought they had sent a message that would keep other humans in line. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous, a debt that would never be forgotten, and 50,000 witnesses who would spend every day of their lives making sure the galaxy remembered what the Velthrak Empire was capable of. Admiral Krexval probably thought he would never hear from the humans again. He was wrong, but he would not understand just how wrong until it was far too late. The humans were already planning their return. And when they came back, they would bring a gift that would make the Velthrak Empire wish they had never heard the name of humanity. 15 years had passed since Teguk Prime burned, but the fire still lived in human hearts. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a bunker that did not appear on any official map, Director Sunho stared at holographic displays showing every Velthrak world in known space. The walls around him were covered with star charts, technical diagrams, and photographs of the dead. 12 million faces looked down at him, reminding him why he came to work every day. Show me the updated fleet positions, Sunho said to his assistant. The hologram shifted, revealing the locations of Velthrak military forces across 300 star systems. Red dots marked their strongest bases, yellow showed patrol routes, green indicated civilian populations. Sunho had been studying these patterns for so long that he could recognize individual ship movements just by looking at the data streams. The Terran Strategic Planning Division was humanity's best-kept secret. While the rest of human space rebuilt, after the refugee crisis, Sunho and his team had spent 15 years learning everything there was to know about their crystal enemies. They knew Velthrak biology, psychology, technology, and military doctrine better than most Velthrak did themselves. A soft chime announced the arrival of Dr. Hyejin, humanity's leading expert on alien biology. She had devoted her career to understanding the crystalline beings who had murdered her homeworld. Her laboratory was filled with Velthrak artifacts recovered from old battlefields, each one studied until she understood every molecule. The harmonic analysis is complete, Hyejin said as she entered the command center. I was right about their molecular structure. Every Velthrak body resonates at specific frequencies, like a living crystal formation. If we can generate the right harmonic pattern, they shatter, Sunho finished. How certain are you? Completely certain. I tested it on the tissue samples we recovered from the Proxima raid last year. The effect is instantaneous and irreversible. Hyejin's voice was calm, professional. She had learned to discuss the destruction of her enemies with the same detachment she once used to study flower petals. But there's more. Their quantum communication network uses the same crystalline matrix as their bodies. If we can create a cascade effect. Sunho leaned forward. This was what they had been hoping for. The effect would spread through their entire empire, like a virus but faster, light-speed transmission through their own communication system. In the outer rim, hidden among the asteroids of the Kepler belt, Commander Taejin watched another battleship roll off the assembly line. The shipyard was a marvel of human engineering, invisible to long-range sensors and powered by quantum reactors that left no energy signature. For 15 years, human industry had been quietly building the largest fleet in galactic history. These were not ordinary warships. Each vessel incorporated reverse-engineered Velthrak technology, but with modifications the crystal aliens would never expect. Human creativity had taken their own weapons and made them better, faster, deadlier, and most importantly, completely immune to Veltrak countermeasures. The flagship of the new fleet was the Teguk's Revenge, commanded by Captain Eugen. She had been a young engineer named Yona when the Velthrak destroyed her world. Now she was 39 years old, hardened by years of military training and driven by a purpose that never wavered. Her ship was armed with weapons that could crack planets and shielded by technology that made it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Every morning, Eugen stood before the memorial wall in her quarters. 12 million names were etched into the metal, including her parents. She touched their names gently, the same ritual she had performed every day for 15 years. "Soon," she whispered to them. "Soon we'll make this right." The memorial wall was not the only one. Every ship in the human fleet carried identical walls. Every soldier, every engineer, every cook and mechanic served alongside the names of the dead. The Velthrak had intended their massacre to break human spirit. Instead, they had given humanity something stronger than hope, the absolute certainty that justice would be done. In the intelligence division, Agent Minji reviewed her latest report from deep inside Velthrak territory. She had spent 10 years building a false identity as a mineral trader, moving freely through their empire while recording everything she saw. The Velthrak had grown lazy with power. They ruled 1,000 worlds and commanded fleets that could devastate star systems. They saw humanity as a minor threat barely worth their attention. "Their confidence will be their weakness," Minji wrote in her encrypted message. "They have forgotten that humans exist. They think we are hiding in fear." Admiral Wu Jin, who had been Lieutenant Minho on that terrible day 15 years ago, coordinated the final positioning of human forces. Disguised ships had been moving through Velthrak space for months, posing as merchant vessels, refugee transports, and even space debris. Each one carried a piece of humanity's revenge, waiting for the signal to reveal their true purpose. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While the Velthrak celebrated their empire at the grand convergence on their capital world, humanity would activate their gift, not a weapon that destroyed quickly, but something that would spread through every Velthrak world simultaneously, carried by their own communication network. Intelligence officer Soyon brought the final piece of the puzzle. Emperor Zixthara has confirmed his attendance at the grand convergence. Every major leader in the Velthrak Empire will be on Veltharox at the same time. Sunho smiled for the first time in months. How poetic. They're gathering to celebrate their superiority over inferior species, while we prepare to show them what inferior species are capable of, Wu Jin added. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated what was coming. 15 years of planning, building, and preparing were about to culminate in a single moment that would reshape the galaxy. The Velthrak Empire had stood for 1,000 years, ruling through fear and overwhelming force. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity. Dr. Hyejin checked her calculations one more time. The harmonic cascade generator was ready, its frequency patterns calibrated to perfection. Agent Minji confirmed that Velthrak security remained focused on external threats, never suspecting that their real enemy was already inside their borders. Captain Eugen reported that her fleet was in position and ready to move. Everything was ready. The debt that had been accumulating interest for 15 years was about to be collected in full. The Velthrak Empire had taught humanity a lesson about power. Now humanity was ready to teach them about consequences. "Send the signal to all units," Sunho ordered. "Operation Memory begins in 72 hours. It's time to deliver our gift." Professor Seokjin stood before the assembled human leadership in the deepest level of the research facility. Around him, the walls hummed with barely contained energy from the device that would change everything. The harmonic cascade generator rose 30 meters into the darkness above, its crystalline components singing with the same frequency that would soon bring down an empire. 15 years ago, they taught us that power comes from unity, Seokjin said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. Today, we teach them that unity can be fragile. The device behind him was beautiful in its terrible purpose. Human engineers had spent years understanding how Velthrak crystal formations worked, how they connected to each other across vast distances, how they shared thoughts and energy through quantum links that spanned the galaxy. The aliens' greatest strength was about to become their greatest weakness. Director Sunho studied the readings on his tablet. "How certain are we that this will work?" "Completely certain," Seokjin replied. "We've tested it on small samples. The harmonic frequency disrupts their crystalline structure at the molecular level. But more importantly, it spreads. One affected, Velthrak will transmit the frequency to others through their natural quantum connections. The effect cascades exponentially." Dr. Hyejin stepped forward with her final analysis. "The beauty of it is that they built the weapon themselves. Their empire-wide communication network, their shared consciousness, their quantum links that allow instant communication across thousands of light years. It all depends on the same crystalline matrix that makes up their bodies. When we activate the generator, every connected Velthrak will become a transmitter." Admiral Wu Jin looked at the tactical displays showing Velthrak fleet positions. "How long until total coverage?" 6 hours for 90% of their population. 12 hours for complete saturation of all connected worlds?" Seokjin's voice was calm, but everyone in the room understood the magnitude of what he was describing. An entire interstellar empire would cease to function in half a day. The plan had taken 5 years to develop and another 10 to build. The harmonic cascade generator was not just a weapon. It was a masterpiece of human engineering that turned the enemy's own biology against them. Every component had been designed to be undetectable by Velthrak sensors until the moment of activation. Agent Minji's latest intelligence report confirmed their timing was perfect. The grand convergence happened only once every 50 years. When the Velthrak Emperor gathered the greatest leaders of his empire on the capital world of Veltharox, they would celebrate their power, while their quantum-linked consciousness made them more vulnerable than they had ever been in their 1,000-year history. "The cargo ship Merchant's Dream is in position in the Veltharox system," reported Fleet Captain Jamin from his command center. Captain Daiho confirms the generator is loaded and ready for deployment. Captain Yujin studied the layout of the Velthrak capital system on her command screen. Her ship, the Tagok's Revenge, waited at the edge of sensor range with the rest of the human fleet. They would not need to fire a single shot. Their gift would do all the work. "Specialist Nari, status report on the delivery system," Yujin called to her weapons officer. "All systems green, Captain. The generator is disguised as mining equipment in Cargo Bay 7. Velthrak Customs passed it without a second look." Nari's young face was serious as she prepared to activate humanity's revenge. "The harmonic frequency will build slowly at first, designed to seem like background radiation. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late to stop." Intelligence Officer Soyon had spent the last month confirming every detail of the Velthrak leadership gathering. Emperor Zixthara will address the Empire at the moment of peak convergence, when all major Velthrak are quantum-linked for maximum unity. They couldn't have chosen a better time for us. In her private quarters, Yujin sat before the memorial wall that bore her parents' names among the 12 million dead. She had been Yeona then, a young engineer who believed the universe was basically fair. The crystal aliens had taught her otherwise, but they had also taught her that fairness was something you had to create yourself. "I know you can't hear me," she said to the names on the wall, "but we kept our promise. We never forgot. We never gave up. And tomorrow, everyone in the galaxy will know that humanity pays its debts." The engineering teams ran final checks on every system. The harmonic cascade generator was the most complex device humans had ever built, requiring perfect synchronization of quantum frequencies across multiple dimensions. One miscalculation could ruin 15 years of preparation. Professor Seokjin reviewed the activation sequence one more time. Phase 1 begins with a low-frequency pulse, barely detectable. This will begin the cascade effect among Velthrak connected to the quantum network. Phase 2 amplifies the signal exponentially, ensuring spread to every major population center. Phase 3 sustains the frequency until structural collapse is complete. And there's no way to reverse it? asked Director Sunho. None. Once the cascade begins, it becomes self-sustaining. The Velthrak communication network will carry the frequency to every connected world simultaneously. Their own technology becomes the delivery system. The moral weight of what they were about to do hung heavy in the chamber. This was not a battle between armies or a conflict over territory. This was the systematic collapse of an entire civilization. But every person in the room remembered the burning cities of Teguk Prime, the families torn apart, the children who died calling for parents who would never come home. They chose this path when they decided humans were expendable, Admiral Wu Jin said quietly. We're simply delivering the consequences they earned. Agent Minji transmitted her final report from inside Veltrak territory. Security is minimal. They're so confident in their superiority that they've stopped watching for threats. The Emperor believes humanity has been broken and scattered. He has no idea we've spent 15 years planning this moment. The countdown began. In 18 hours, the Grand Convergence would reach its peak. The Velthrak Empire would gather its greatest leaders to celebrate their dominance over inferior species. Emperor Zixithara would speak about the glory of crystalline civilization, while humanity prepared to teach him about the long memory of supposedly inferior species. Captain Deho aboard the Merchant's Dream sent his final confirmation. Generator is armed and ready. Beginning approach to optimal position. The gift is ready for delivery. Across human space, families of Teguk Prime survivors gathered around their own memorial walls. They had waited 15 years for this day, carrying their grief and anger through every moment of their lives. Tonight, they would finally see justice done. The Velthrak Empire was about to learn why you should never underestimate a species' capacity for patience, planning, and revenge. The Grand Convergence had begun. Across the crystal spires of Veltharoks, billions of Velthrak minds linked together in perfect harmony. Their crystalline bodies resonated with shared thoughts and emotions, creating a symphony of consciousness that had sustained their empire for 1,000 years. Emperor Zixithara stood at the center of it all, basking in the collective energy of his species. High above the capital city, the cargo ship Merchant's Dream drifted among hundreds of other vessels in orbital traffic. Captain Deho watched, his instruments carefully as the ship moved into the perfect position. To Velthrak traffic control, he was just another trader bringing goods to the capital during the great celebration. They had no idea he carried humanity's gift. Approaching optimal range, reported Specialist Nari from the weapons console. Her fingers hovered over the activation controls for the harmonic cascade generator. All systems show green. The device is ready for deployment. Captain Yujin monitored everything from her command ship at the edge of the star system. The Taiguks, revenge waited in the darkness between planets, invisible to Velthrak sensors but ready to observe humanity's revenge. Around her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. They had trained for this moment for years. Begin Phase 1, Yujin ordered. Specialist Nari activated the first sequence. Deep in the cargo hold of the Merchant's Dream, the harmonic cascade generator came to life. The initial frequency was so low it barely registered on instruments, designed to seem like natural background radiation. But on the planet below, a few Velthrak paused in their celebration, sensing something unusual. Emperor Zixithara was in the middle of his speech about Velthrak superiority when the first harmonic touched the edge of his consciousness. His crystalline form vibrated slightly, but he dismissed it as excitement from the convergence. Around him, his advisors and generals continued their perfect harmony, unaware that something was beginning to go wrong. My fellow Velthrak, the Emperor continued, his voice carrying across the planet through their quantum link. Today we celebrate not just our empire, but our destiny as the greatest species in the galaxy. We have brought order to chaos, civilization to primitive worlds, and proper hierarchy to lesser beings who once dared to defy us. In orbit, Captain Deho smiled grimly as he heard the broadcast. Proper hierarchy, he repeated. Let's see how superior you feel in a few minutes. The harmonic frequency continued building, following the careful progression Professor Seokjin had designed. It moved through the Velthrak quantum network like water flowing through crystal pipes, touching each connected mind with a subtle disturbance that grew stronger with every passing second. On the planet's surface, more Velthrak began to notice the effect. A few courtiers stumbled as their crystalline bodies began to vibrate at frequencies that didn't match their natural resonance. The harmony of the convergence developed discordant notes that made some of the gathered leaders uncomfortable. "What is this disturbance?" demanded General Crixton, one of the Emperor's most trusted commanders. His crystal form was flickering with unstable energy patterns. "Something is interfering with our connection." Emperor Zixithara tried to maintain his composure, but he could feel it too now. The harmonic frequency was growing stronger, and it was spreading through their network faster than anything they had ever encountered. This was not a natural phenomenon. This was an attack. "Find the source," the Emperor commanded. "Scan all ships in orbit. Check every communication relay." But it was already too late. The harmonic cascade generator had moved into Phase 2. "Captain," Eugen opened a communication channel to the entire Velthrak Empire. Her message would be carried by their own quantum network to every connected world simultaneously. When she spoke, her voice was calm and cold. "This is Captain Eugen of the Terran Defense Force speaking for the 12 million souls you murdered at Teguk Prime 15 years ago. You called us inferior. You called us arrogant. You said our world would burn as payment for our defiance." She paused, watching the harmonic reading spike across her display. "Today, humanity delivers our payment in return." The second phase activated with devastating effect. The harmonic frequency amplified exponentially, and suddenly thousands of Velthrak across the capital began to crack. Their screams of pain created a feedback loop through their quantum network, spreading the destructive frequency to every connected mind at light speed. Emperor Zixithara watched in horror as his courtiers began to shatter like glass struck by a hammer. The crystal formations that made up their bodies could not withstand the harmonic resonance. The very network that had made them strong was now carrying their destruction to every corner of their empire. "Stop this!" the Emperor broadcast desperately, his own form beginning to fracture. "We will negotiate. We will pay reparations. Name your terms." Admiral Wujin's voice answered from somewhere in the darkness of space. "Humanity doesn't negotiate. With those who commit genocide, we simply collect what we're owed." The cascade effect was unstoppable now. On world after world, Velthrak civilization collapsed as their quantum network became a weapon against them. Military commanders found themselves unable to give orders as their crystal bodies failed. Scientists and engineers crumbled before their instruments. Entire cities fell silent as their populations succumbed to the harmonic frequency their own technology had spread. Fleet Captain Jemin reported from his position near the Velthrak naval stronghold at Krexval Station. "The garrison is completely incapacitated. Their ships are drifting without power. The station's quantum computers have shut down automatically to protect themselves." Dr. Hiejin monitored the cascade's progress from her research vessel. "The frequency is spreading faster than our most optimistic projections. Every major Velthrak world is reporting structural failures. Their entire communication network has become a delivery system for their own destruction." On Veltharok's Emperor Zixthara made one final desperate attempt to save his empire. Fighting through the pain of his disintegrating body, he reached for the controls of an ancient weapon hidden beneath his palace. If he was going to die, he would take human space with him. Captain Eugen saw the energy readings spike on her sensors. "The Emperor is trying to activate something big. All ships, prepare for immediate assault." The Teguk's Revenge and her escort vessels dropped their stealth fields and accelerated toward the planet at maximum speed. They had to stop whatever weapon the Emperor was preparing before it could fire. The irony was not lost on Eugen. After 15 years of careful planning, it might come down to a direct battle after all. "For every life lost at Teguk Prime," she said as her ship's weapons charged, "for every child who died calling for parents who would never come home, this ends now." The human fleet dove through Veltharox's defenses like arrows through paper. The Velthrak defenders were helpless, their crews shattered by the harmonic cascade, their ships drifting like monuments to fallen empire. Within minutes, Eugen's weapons had destroyed the Emperor's superweapon before it could complete its firing sequence. Emperor Zixthara collapsed as his crystal form finally succumbed to the harmonic frequency. His last thought, transmitted across the dying network to every surviving Velthrak, was a single word: inferior. But humanity had proven otherwise. The gift had been delivered, and the debt had been paid in full. The harmonic cascade spread across Velthrak space like a wave of destruction, carried by the very network that had once been the Empire's greatest strength. On world after world, the crystalline beings found their bodies betraying them as the resonant frequency shattered their molecular structure. What had taken 1,000 years to build crumbled in a matter of hours. Fleet Captain Yeaman watched from his position near Krexval Station as the mighty Velthrak fortress went dark. The base was named after Admiral Krexval, the crystal being who had destroyed Teguk Prime 15 years ago. Now his monument had become a tomb for the empire he had served. All garrison ships are drifting, Jimin reported to Admiral Wu Jin. No signs of organized resistance. Their crews can't maintain cohesion long enough to operate their weapons. The irony was perfect. The Velthrak had built their empire on the idea that unity made them invincible. Their shared consciousness, their quantum-linked network, their ability to coordinate across vast distances, all of it had made them the most powerful force in the galaxy. But humanity had turned that strength into weakness with elegant precision. Dr. Hyejin monitored the cascade's progress from her research vessel, the Scientific Vengeance. Her instruments tracked the harmonic frequency as it raced through Velthrak space at light speed, following their own communication channels to every connected world. The data was both fascinating and terrible. The cascade is self-sustaining now, she reported to Director Sunho. Every affected Velthrak becomes a transmitter, amplifying the signal. We estimate total societal collapse within 72 hours across all connected territories. But humanity's revenge was not mindless slaughter. As the Velthrak Empire crumbled, the second part of the human plan activated. Across crystal space, ships that had been hiding as merchants and refugees suddenly revealed their true nature. Human warships decloaked around every major Velthrak world, broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. The voice belonged to Dawan, the elderly historian who had survived Teguk Prime. He was ancient now, barely able to stand, but he had lived to see this moment. His words carried the weight of 15 years of planning and the authority of 12 million dead. The Velthrak Empire is ended. His voice echoed across dying worlds. Your crystal networks are shattered. Your military is helpless. Your leaders are dead or dying. But humanity offers you a choice that you never gave us. The message continued, translated into every Velthrak dialect and broadcast from 1,000 human ships simultaneously. Surrender completely. Accept occupation and re-education. Learn to live as individuals rather than a conquering collective. Do this, and you may survive. Continue to resist and the harmonic cascade will run its course until nothing remains of your species. Most Velthrak worlds surrendered immediately. Their governments had collapsed, their military commanders were dead, and their people were too busy trying to survive the cascade to organize resistance. White flags of surrender appeared on planet after planet as the crystal beings faced the reality of their situation. Captain Eugen received surrender offers from dozens of military commanders who had somehow survived the initial cascade. Many of them begged for mercy, promising to make amends for their empire's crimes. Others tried to negotiate, offering tribute and resources in exchange for stopping the harmonic weapon. Tell them the cascade cannot be stopped, Eugen replied. To each surrender offer, it's self-sustaining now, their own network will carry it to completion. But we will provide medical aid to survivors who cooperate fully with occupation forces. On the dying capital world of Veltharox, the ruins of Emperor Zixithara's palace had become a symbol of fallen empire. The crystal towers that had once reached toward the sky now lay in glittering fragments across the city. But in the deepest levels of the palace, automated systems were still functioning. Emperor Zixathara was dead, his crystalline form shattered beyond repair. But his final act of defiance lived on in the ancient superweapon he had tried to activate. The device was older than the Empire itself, a relic from the wars that had first established Veltrak dominance. If it fired, it could destroy every human world within 50 light-years. Intelligence Officer Soyan detected the weapon's energy signature just as its charging sequence reached critical levels. All ships, priority alert. The capital world has an active superweapon preparing to fire. We have less than 10 minutes before it reaches full power. Captain Yujin was already moving before Soyan finished her report. The Taeguk's Revenge dove through the atmosphere of Veltharox like a falling star, racing toward the palace complex. Around her, the city was chaos. Crystal buildings collapsing, emergency systems failing, the few surviving Veltrak fleeing. In panic, "Target acquired," announced Specialist Nari. "The weapon is buried 3 kilometers beneath the palace. I need a direct hit with our biggest bunker buster to reach it. For every life lost at Taeguk Prime," Yujin said as her weapons charged. "For every child who died calling for parents who would never come. This ends now." The ship's main cannon fired once, a brilliant beam of energy that punched through crystal and stone to reach the ancient weapon. The explosion that followed lit up the sky above Veltharox like a second sun, marking the end of the Velthrak Empire's last desperate attempt at revenge. Admiral Wu Jin coordinated the cleanup operations. Across crystal space, human medical teams worked alongside engineers to help Velthrak survivors who had accepted surrender terms. It was strange to see the former conquerors begging for help from the species they had once considered inferior. Status report from all sectors, Wu Jin requested during the daily briefing. Commander Taijin's voice came from the industrial sectors. "Manufacturing worlds are completely shut down. We've secured all major shipyards and weapon facilities. No organized resistance detected." Agent Minji reported from the border regions. "Outer colonies are requesting protection from raiders. With the Empire gone, some worlds are vulnerable to attack from neighboring species." "Provide it," Admiral Wu Jin ordered. "We didn't destroy one empire just to let chaos consume the region. Human forces will maintain peace until stable local governments can be established." The reckoning was almost complete. In less than a week, humanity had brought down an empire that had ruled 1,000 worlds for a millennium. The Velthrak who survived would spend generations learning to live without their quantum network, without their shared consciousness, without the unity that had once made them strong. But the galaxy was watching. Other species had seen what happened when you underestimated humanity's capacity for patience and revenge. Trade delegations were already arriving at human worlds, eager to establish friendly relations. Territorial disputes that had simmered for decades were suddenly resolved through peaceful negotiation. The lesson was clear. Humanity might seem weak, might appear peaceful, but they never forgot a debt. And when they came to collect, they brought gifts that could shatter empires. 5 years had passed since the harmonic cascade shattered the Velthrak Empire. Admiral Wu Jin walked through the corridors of what had once been Emperor Zixathara's palace, now serving as headquarters for the Terran Occupation Authority. The crystal architecture remained beautiful, its flowing lines and prismatic surfaces catching light in ways that human buildings never could. But the quantum networks that had once connected it to an empire were gone forever, severed by the same harmonic weapon that had brought down a civilization. The palace had been transformed into something the Velthrak had never imagined. A center of justice and rehabilitation. Where once crystal beings had planned the conquest of inferior species, humans now worked to teach the survivors how to live as individuals rather than components of a conquering collective. Governor Soyan met Wu Jin in the main hall, her daily report ready as always. She had overseen the transformation of dozens of former Velthrak worlds, each one a lesson in how quickly an empire could become something entirely different. "Status report from the outer sectors," she said, consulting her tablet. "Velkaris, 7 has established its first independent government. Former military commander Zeklon has been elected as their civilian leader. He's requesting trade agreements with the Terran Federation." "Approved," Wu Jin replied. "What about the industrial worlds?" Production is back to 60% of pre-cascade levels. The surviving Velthrak are adapting to individual ownership, rather than collective resource sharing. Some are struggling with the concept, but the younger generations are learning quickly. It had been the most difficult part of the occupation, teaching beings who had shared consciousness for millennia how to think and act as separate individuals. The Velthrak had never known privacy, personal property, or individual ambition. Everything had been shared through their quantum network, from thoughts to resources to identity itself. Captain Eugen had played a crucial role in the rehabilitation process. Her ship, the Teguk's Revenge, now served as a mobile classroom, visiting Velthrak worlds to help with the transition. She had learned to speak their crystal chime language and understood their psychology better than most humans. The key is patience, she had explained to other occupation officers. They're not just learning new ways to live, they're learning how to be individuals for the first time in their species' history. In the memorial gardens that had been built, where the Emperor's throne room once stood, Eugen placed fresh flowers at the monument bearing 12 million names. The garden was tended by former Velthrak soldiers as part of their rehabilitation program. They had learned to grow earth plants alongside crystal formations, creating something beautiful from the mixture of two different worlds. Beside her stood her 5-year-old daughter, little Jiwan, named after the captain who had saved the survivors of Teguk Prime. The child had been born after the war into a galaxy where humanity was respected and feared in equal measure. "Why did it take so long, Mommy?" little Jiwan asked, looking up at the memorial wall. "Why didn't humanity fight back right away?" Eugen knelt beside her daughter, choosing her words carefully. "Because real justice isn't about anger, sweetheart. It's about making sure something like this can never happen again. Humanity doesn't just strike back, we make sure our enemies remember why they should never have hurt us in the first place." The child nodded seriously, then ran off to play among the crystal flowers that grew nowhere else in the galaxy. Watching her, Eugen felt something she had not experienced since her own childhood on Teguk Prime, the certainty that the future would be better than the past. In his private office, Director Sunho reviewed the final intelligence reports from across known space. The destruction of the Velthrak Empire had sent shockwaves through every major civilization. Species that had considered humanity weak and scattered now sent diplomatic missions offering friendship and trade agreements. Territorial disputes that had lasted for centuries were suddenly resolved through negotiation rather than force. "The Andromedans have agreed to our mining rights proposal," reported Agent Minji, who had returned from her deep cover mission to become humanity's chief diplomatic intelligence officer. They're also requesting technical assistance with their defense systems. It seems they're worried about becoming the next target of human revenge. "We're not in the revenge business anymore," Sunho replied, "but let them worry. Fear can be more effective than friendship in preventing future conflicts." The Terran Federation had become the most powerful force in the galaxy almost by accident. No one wanted to test whether humanity held grudges against other species. Trade, routes that had been closed to human ships for decades, suddenly opened. Technology exchanges that had been rejected for centuries were now eagerly proposed by alien governments. Former Velthrak worlds had become showcases of human governance. Crime rates had dropped to nearly zero as the crystal beings learned to respect individual rights and property. Education systems taught tolerance and diversity. Most importantly, former soldiers were retrained as peacekeepers and mediators, using their natural strength to protect rather than conquer. Admiral Wu Jin stood on the observation deck of the palace, looking out over the city that had once been the heart of an evil empire. Crystal beings worked alongside human supervisors, rebuilding their world according to new principles. Children of both species played together in parks that had once been military parade grounds. "It's remarkable how quickly they adapted," observed Dr. Hye-jin, who had become the leading expert on post-cascade Velthrak psychology. "Once they lost their quantum network, they discovered individual creativity and innovation. Some of them are producing art and literature that surpasses anything their empire ever created. Oppression stifles more than just freedom," Wu Jin replied. "It kills the imagination." The transformation was not complete. Some former Velthrak worlds struggled with independence, begging human administrators to make decisions for them. Others tried to recreate their old empire on a smaller scale, only to be quickly stopped by peacekeeping forces. But overall, the occupation had been a success beyond humanity's most optimistic projections. In the archives deep beneath the palace, the complete records of Velthrak crimes were preserved for future generations. Dowan had died 2 years after the Cascade, but not before seeing his historical work become the foundation for galactic law regarding genocide and species extermination. His final words had been simple: "The debt is paid." Director Sunho made his last entry in the classified logs that had chronicled humanity's 15-year journey from victims to victors. His hands shook slightly with age as he typed the final words of the longest intelligence operation in human history. Operation Memory is officially concluded. The Velthrak Empire has been dissolved, and its former territories integrated into the galactic community under human oversight. Survivors have been successfully rehabilitated and pose no threat to galactic peace. The debt incurred at Teguk Prime has been paid in full. He paused, thinking about the 12 million souls who had died so long ago and the lesson their sacrifice had taught the galaxy. Let this serve as a warning to all who would oppress the innocent. Humanity is slow to anger, but our memory is eternal, our patience infinite, and our justice absolute. We do not forget our debts, and we always collect what we are owed. The memorial gardens were quiet in the evening light, tended by former enemies who had learned to honor the dead they had once ignored. Crystal formations grew beside earth flowers, creating something beautiful from the ashes of empire. Children of two species played together while their parents worked side by side to build a better future. The debt was paid, the empire was ended, and the galaxy would remember.